Hello everybody, welcome back to the 1.0 Exploration series once again. This will be the last part for the very optional areas that you have to go through underground to find, being the Moonlight Altar and briefly checking out the Inverted Carian Study Hall. So after this we're going to return to the major areas of the game once again. So yeah, let's finish this. On the world map for this area, I noticed that there's a lot of differences in the overall drawing. The 1.0 map is lacking a lot of the ruin indicators, which would just give a lot less feedback on where you could explore and such. And this little fishtail looking formation is also removed. As cute as it is, from as high up as you are and with the fog effect, you can't really tell the fish formation is even there, so I guess it's fine to remove it either way. The Adula dragon fight seemed the same more or less, so I couldn't tell of any difference. And all the smaller dragons are still roaming around in this area. I even had one fall to its death, which I don't know could happen, but I guess it makes sense. There's still starlight shards scattered all over the place in the Cathedral of Manicelis, so that's a consumable you'll need a lot of. There's still a ton here. Now going down to essentially finish Ranni's questline, I noticed that after the cutscene, her spawn is a lot buggier and faster in 1.0, and also doesn't have the same sound effect of her appearing like in post-release. So you know, just small little polishes. The cutscene and dialogue were all the same, so nothing to comment on there. Now looking at the Dark Moon Greatsword that it drops, still named the same, but the Ash of War that it has is named differently. In the inventory menu, it's called the Moonlight Wave, but when you actually bring it out to the HUD, it's called Sword of Moonlight, which both are incorrect. It's supposed to be called Moonlight Greatsword, which definitely sounds like a very conscious throwback to the previous names in the previous games. Now face value, it looks like the sword is the same as well, but once I buffed it the first time, I noticed that there wasn't the icy particle effects. And even in the buff state, it seems like it doesn't have those effects either. And sure enough, once I checked the description, it doesn't seem to have any passive frost buildup. And trying it, yeah, it doesn't seem to have frost buildup in this weapon in 1.0. The beam is still the same, but as you can tell, even the frost effect isn't there either, so yeah, if you're a fan of the frost buildup in this weapon, which I assume most of you who use it are, sorry to say that it doesn't have any frost. But I think I personally kind of like it, and actually made me want to use it for the playthrough. I like that it seems to be pure magic based, even if it's probably weaker overall. And it just feels like a unique weapon that you can only use in the 1.0 version of this game, so. I tend to not like weapons which transformations or buffs don't change anything about the weapon, it's just an objective improvement. But since I'm only using it for PvE, why not? This is one of the only games where I haven't used the Moonlight Greatsword at all, so. Now that we finished Ranni's quest, we can go back to her subjects. So I noticed Blaidd has no dialogue when going mad as you go towards the entrance of Ranni's Rise. He still attacks you and such, but there's definitely some added dialogue later on in post-release.
No. I'm part of her very being. I can never betray her. No matter what might happen. Ranni. She needs me.
When checking his loot, I did notice that his greatsword has Freezing Surge as the weapon art in the menu. But once I actually go to the HUD again, it's Wolf Assault instead, which is the correct one in post-release, so. Going to check out EG next. After talking to him and reloading the area, he was still dead, but he didn't have the black flames surrounding him. And when I looted him, firstly, he doesn't have the mirror helm that he normally drops here. But he also dropped an item I haven't seen yet, EG's Confession. Now when I went to check this out in current patch, he did not drop it. But what I found weird is that there are logs of this item in like the wiki, for instance, and some other websites. And they all claim it's just a regular loot and there wasn't any comment on it being 1.0 exclusive or anything. But I've never seen this before. So could this be an item that was maybe cut out later on? Have any of you found this item playing through the game and it wasn't 1.0? Please let me know in the comments if you know anything about this at all. But even besides that, once I actually read the description, it refers to EG as a she, which is definitely curious. And made me go back and check the dialogue for Blaidd, for instance, and he does refer to EG as a he at one point. So I assume what happened is just one of those things where in the Japanese version, the term they use is gender neutral, but when translating it, they simply had to use she. Or at least in 1.0, because apparently some websites claim it did say he and such, but who knows. The ringleader's Evergel is called Blaidd Span Evergel in 1.0, the one that holds Electo. And when killing her, she still drops the Black Knife Ashes, but the spelling is very slightly different of the name. Chelona's Rise is called Glintstone Rise as per usual, but for the riddle that actually has, instead of killing 3 turtles, you only need to kill 2. The one that's right behind the Rise, and the one near the Evergel. I normally tend to look for the east one that's normally there after the first one near the Rise, and I didn't find it, so I definitely got worried that I was gonna have to look for it somewhere else. But after I killed the normal third one, it just released the gate. So I only found 2 turtles, and it seemed like you only need to kill 2 of them, as opposed to the 3 later on in post-release. They probably want you to explore the whole area instead of just a couple of segments of it, so I guess that makes sense. Now, Ranni's Dark Moon Rise seems the same as far as I could tell, but I don't have the stats to use it yet, so I'll have to taste that later on and see if the frost buildup still applies and such. Now we're going briefly to the Inverted Carian Study Hall, since there's not a lot of changes, but a couple that are there are definitely very interesting. In this little nook, there's no Mask of Confidence, the one that looks like Celus's mask, but without the hat. In the bridge going to the Divine Tower, normally you get ambushed by Godskin Noble on the bridge, and when you kill it, it drops the Godskin Noble set. But in 1.0, it seems like it's just not there at all. I even went backwards to see if that spawned it, and even after getting the loot from the tower, I went back again to see if maybe it has a different trigger, but no, just doesn't seem to be there. So who knows where the Godskin Noble set is, if anywhere. Now the curse mark and heirloom are still there like normal, but when I was reading the description for the curse mark, it mentioned a Fia with a PH spelling instead of F, which normally is supposed to be there at all, but it actually did remind me that I had seen that name before in the black knife print item. So it definitely made me curious to see if this is maybe supposed to be an alias for the other Fia, which if it is, that's a terrible one, but I did go back to talk to her and it looks like she would, at least in subtitles, be spelling it with an F normally. I normally don't comment on descriptions or lore too much necessarily, but this is definitely interesting. Makes me wonder if there's supposed to be another character related to all this, or just a misspelling of some sort. It could be. Maybe someone more familiar with Japanese has some insight into why both of those could be a legit spelling for Fia. Now before we finish, there was a bug brought up to me, and that is that if you ever use a talisman to increase your stats, like the sword seals or the heirlooms, to be able to use a weapon, you can still wield the weapon normally, but you can't use the Astral War for it. It just won't execute properly. And I hadn't encountered that issue until trying to use the Wing of Astel and the Bastard Star, in which I could technically wield at least one of those weapons, but it wasn't letting me actually use the Astral War, which does kind of make the heirlooms a little bit not great in that case, given that a lot of time people like to use the weapons for the Astral War. So if you need an heirloom to use it, then might as well just get the stats instead. But yeah, just a very obvious bug in 1.0. And that is all for the video. So yeah, as I mentioned, we are done with a lot of the very sidetracky optional areas of the game now. And we're going to make our way now to Altus Plateau, which is going to be a big video, I assume. So it might take me a little while longer than it has lately to put out these videos. Not to mention, I probably won't be working on this as hard as it was in December-ish, November as well. There are a couple of things I want to take care of, personal and also other videos that I would like to make eventually. So I hope you'll bear with me. But there's still a ton of content to look forward to. We got both Mount Gilmer and Lionel after that. And I decided while I did in the last video that I think I do want to put up that to a vote, which one do you want to see first. So whenever I release the Altus video, I'll probably at the same time put out a community post polling which one you'd like to see first. So yeah, I look forward to that. Until then, if you'd like to support me monetarily to help me put out these videos more reliably and faster maybe, do consider becoming a member to support me financially. This is the 8th part of the series and still got lots of ways to go, so consider subscribing as well. Here's a playlist with all of them and some of the previous parts and such that you can watch now if you haven't. So until then, thanks for watching. I hope to see you again. Bye bye.